House District. So glad to have you here.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
I sure can. I sure can. I imagine this is probably your first TikTok live.
It is.
It's gonna be fun.
Ah,
We've got some great folks, people from Houston, people from all over that are in the chat. They'll be chatting and asking questions as well. So first, let's start by, I want to have you introduce yourself for the folks so they know who you are and what you're running for.
yes. Well, hello, everyone. I am Dr. Darlene Breaux. And as you mentioned before, I'm running for state representative for District 149. A little bit about me. I'm a wife, a mother. I've lived in the community for over 30 years. I have my doctorate in organizational leadership, but my career has been in education. And so I say that I've served in a lot of roles from the classroom to the boardroom. I currently serve as board president of A-Leaf ISD. And as board president during that time, I have worked across different differences. I've managed multi-million dollar budgets, and I've literally been out in the community understanding what their needs are. And so that's a little bit about who I am and what I've done. And I like to tell people that your school district, people say, oh, you're just about education. But see, anybody that knows the school district, they know it's more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. Your schools are one of your largest employers in a community. Your school districts are a reflection of what's going on. And so that it has given me the opportunity to address community needs such as safety and, when the EBT funds were frozen, we fed our kids and their families. So having that experience of knowing what our community needs and responding, that's what I've done, and that's what I'll continue to do.
I love that. And so one thing that I was looking at your website that stood out to me was your background in education, having been a teacher, being on the school board. And I just think this moment, one of the big pieces that the state government is over is education. And so having people in education that have an understanding of the impact of decisions in Austin on school boards is so important. There are a lot of these decisions that are happening from people who've never been in a role like Dr. Breaux as a teacher or as a school board member, who are just kind of making these decisions and not fully understanding the impact as it trickles down. So I think that's really important. So I want to talk about you. So you were in a runoff against an incumbent, correct?
Yes.
So, and there was a very small margin. How many votes was it to get you to this runoff?
Well, right now there was a couple of different numbers, but right now it was 3 vote difference.
Y'all, and that's why, so people are often like, oh, my vote doesn't matter. But these down ballot races, first of all, everyone in Texas is going to have a state house district on their ballot, every single person. And 3 votes is how three. Our estimate that we had for Sway was 9. But now she's saying it's 3 votes, y'all. That's why I'm so big about pushing Sway and pushing your down ballot races, because and there probably were like 10 people who probably did not vote all the way down their ballot.
Absolutely.
Dr. Breaux on their ballot. I say 10, probably more than that had Dr. Breaux on their ballot, who probably would have voted for her if they voted all the way down. And so it's so important. And State Rep Lauren Ashley Simmons told me one time that the people that are closest, the people at the end of the ballot, have more impact on your everyday life.
That's right. And I'm excited that there were some big names on the ticket, right? There were some big names on the ballot that drew out a lot of people. And that was great. But when I think about, there's about 100,000 registered voters, right? In District 149, less than 10% actually came out and voted in the primary election. And it's projected that even fewer than that will come out and vote in the runoffs. as I'm out talking to people in the community, they're like, what? I already voted. There's another election. Yes, y'all. Yes, there is a runoff election. And, the funny thing is, for years, I've always said, hey, every vote counts. Every vote counts. Little did I ever know that I would be in a situation that literally came down to 3 votes. And so I have literally changed my saying, not just saying every vote counts, but your vote counts. Because when you think of your parents, your neighbors, your people in your household, 3 people. So making sure that your church members know, hey, there is a runoff election. I need for you to come back out and vote. Making sure that when you're making your plan to come and vote during early voting, which May 18th through the 22nd, y'all, that's 5 days. 5 days. We don't have the weekend this time. Literally 5 days, May 18th through the 22nd. And then election day is the Tuesday after Memorial Day. And so we have got to, I call it Take It to the Polls Tuesday. That's what I call it. Look, yes, go eat, have your barbecue, enjoy your community and your friends. But that Tuesday, if you haven't already voted in the early voting, you need to come out and make sure that you vote, because there is a runoff election. And so, as you mentioned earlier, the further down your ballot you go, the closer that position affects your everyday life. Not too often are you going to run into your president, or run into your state senator or whoever, but you should be running into your state rep, right? Your state rep should be in your community. They should be coming to your homeowners association meetings. They should be holding town halls, right? So it's important. Your vote counts.
I was on a live a couple weeks ago with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and she was like, if it was up to her, she would switch the order of the ballot, where you had to vote for those down ballot races first. She would flip the order, where you put like the big races at the end. And I was like, yes, that would be ideal, but probably wouldn't happen in Texas unless we flipped without flipping the House. So I'm curious, what made you decide to run for this seat? The seat is currently held by a Democrat, so it's not a flip seat, but what made you decide that I need to run, I need to step into this role and take my talents to Austin and help fight for people in Austin?
That was something that I really thought deeply about. And so I was raised in a family with, faith, family, and community service was just what we was raised to do. And so I've always found a way to serve in the community. During that time, I've had conversations with teachers who constantly say, that they don't make enough, their paycheck is thin, but they've still been able to come out their pocket and buy breakfast bars for those kids who miss breakfast. Everybody that knows a teacher knows that they have that drawer, that cabinet that they have, deodorant and toothpaste and a comb and a brush and things to make sure that our kids, can learn with dignity. I think about Joe. Joe is a business owner, and he talked about Hurricane Beryl and how his business was flooded, and he lost a lot of his equipment, refrigerators and such. He's still trying to recuperate and build back to where he was before. I think about those parents whose kids who learn differently, and those teachers who need the resources to teach those kids in the way that they learn. I was on the doorstep of one of my neighbors, and we were talking, and he said, we're just hard working people trying our best to get by. we are not trying to ask for a handout, but we want to live in a safe neighborhood. Last weekend, I talked to a nurse, and she said how she's consistently seeing the same people over and over again in the emergency room. Why? Because they can't afford insurance. And so the only way they know to get their medication is to come to the emergency room. So I'm running to support my neighbors because my neighbors deserve it.
So, and she's saying neighbors, and it's so true because the state house districts are very small. They kind of are narrow in Houston. They're one of the smallest districts that you can be in when you look at your map. So it is. You'll know a lot of people. These are your literal neighbors that'll be voting for you, which I think is kind of a cool concept here. And I hate that this role doesn't get as much attention. I've been doing an exercise with having people, write out tell me who your state house rep is. And people often are telling me, oh, they'll be like, oh, my rep is Christian Menifee. I'm like, no, that's your U.S. House rep. Who's your state house rep? I'm like, it's probably one of these two people. And they're like, oh, okay, give me the link. I'll go look. But getting into that exercise, because one thing, and I'm hoping to talk to some other state house reps too, going into November, because we got to flip this state house, y'all. And that's one of the big things. We have to flip the state house, 14 seats. So it's so important that we are all committed to voting all the way down. One thing I wanted to ask you too, because we have so many state house districts in Houston, there's a lot. Like if I drive like a mile from my house, I'm in another district. They kind of go long and narrow. Can you describe to people what area this is that 149 includes? Like what neighborhood?
Yeah, so it's like southwest Houston, kind of like the A-Leaf area. Mm-hmm. Then you go a little over I-10, and then you get the tip of Katy. Okay. But just like you said, you've been doing that exercise with people to kind of show them where. I've done the same thing. I've done a social media little post that says, this is what you need to do. I showed them, hey, look on your voter registration card. If you look at the top, it'll tell you who your congressional district, your state rep is. But also, here's an easy way to do it. Literally Google who represents me. It pulls up a form, you put in your address, and then it pops up who your representatives are, like at the federal level, at the state level, your SBOE, State Board of Education. So that is everybody has their phone in their hand, right? That's an easy Google. You Google what restaurant to go to. You Google, hey, I saw these shoes. Where can I get? You Google everything else. Google who represents me.
C. Lynn dropped the link for the Texas link for this, y'all, and it'll give you all the different things Dr. Breaux was talking about. So that it'll give you your U.S. Congressperson, it'll give you your state house, your state senator, and then also your SOBE, your state board of education. So yeah, I highly recommend knowing that. When I moved, I'm like, okay, who do I have over here? And it's important because when you see things, even positive things, I've made a point to go message my reps when they do something I really appreciate. So for example, the quorum break, I messaged my rep and said, I know you probably get a lot of messages saying this is horrible, this is the worst thing, but I want you to know that we support that. We support that. I'm curious, what are some issues that are really important to you going into Austin? I know that we have we have a very unique, in our state government works a little bit differently, y'all. They are they only meet every other year without, we could have a special session, but if not, they meet every other year. They won't meet till 2027. So what are some things that are priorities for you in Austin, priorities for your community, should you win the seat, the runoff, and then of course in November as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, me being an educator, public education is definitely a priority. That's what a lot of people talk to me about, literally because that's kind of like my history. But being out there on those streets, I have learned what the district's priorities are, and safety is a big one. And safety meaning not just physical safety, but also mental health. A lot of our community members are seeing more and more unhoused people that are, out just trying to figure things out, but they're on the streets. And so making sure that there are resources available for them as well. So thinking about safety, but also mental health. And speaking of healthcare, in District 149, we are truly blessed to have some silver seniors, quite a few of them, right? And so for them, healthcare is a big issue. I cannot tell you the number of people who have told me that the cost of their medication has skyrocketed. They cannot afford it. They have to make because they're on a fixed income. So they're like, okay, I can only buy half of my medication right now. And I need to be able to feed, put food on my table. So that's a huge issue for the community. The raggedy roads, the infrastructure. I'm just going to say, that's how they told me that they were like, these raggedy roads. There's a couple of roads that, you drive down and you have to zigzag to avoid the potholes and, some of the roads, they hold water. One of my, the people that live in the community, she said that she was pulled over by a police officer because she was zigzagging. And she had to tell him, look at these raggedy roads. I'm trying to save my tires, man. So those are the things that are important to them. When I talk to the business owners, they talk a lot about that workforce pipeline and not being able to have enough, qualified or certified people to work with in their companies and their businesses. So that truly is a priority for them. And so when I know that those are the issues that are impacting my community, those are the issues that your state rep should be fighting for when that budget is being developed, right? I need a piece of this budget because I got to fix these raggedy roads, right? So those are the priorities that I'll be fighting for.
Of course. So one of the big topics this week, of course, has been, I said this week, it's been the longest week ever, of course, has been voting rights. We are, the system that we have, the voting rights are under attack by our Supreme Court, and states in the South, like our home state of Texas, we kind of kicked off this gerrymandering arms race. One thing I think a lot of people do not understand is that your state government draws these maps. It's your state government. And so people are often focused on who's going to Congress to rep them. But in actuality, people in these state house seats are the ones who really are getting to decide that in so many ways when it comes to the map. So I'm curious, what are some of your thoughts about that piece of this in this role? We've had the quorum break. We've had a lot of attention drawn to the Texas State House because of gerrymandering, voting rights, Section 2, all these different things. So I'm just curious what some of your thoughts are on that in this role. It's a lot.
It is a lot. But you know what? When I'm talking to people out there, that if it wasn't such a big deal, they wouldn't be trying so hard to change it, right? So you have to realize the power that you have, right? You can't just sit back and say, oh, well, it's a done deal. They're going to do it anyway. No, that while you have a voice right now, you better figure out who's going to be in the seat and make sure that you know that person is going to vote in your best interest. You've got to get the right people up there because right now it's like it's divided. And so why? Because we have a lot of people that they may sit back and they don't go out and vote. And so right now is the time. We're at a critical junction here. But I was literally telling a person about this today. I was in the March primaries. I was at the polls from 7 to 7. I saw some of everything. This is the honest truth. There was a woman who was coming to vote and she only had one leg. And so she was like trying to get, and I saw her, and so I was trying to help her out of her car, and she had her, her like walker crutches things. And so I was like kind of walking with her up there. And I was like, man, because she had to park in the back of the parking lot. And so I was helping her up there, and I was talking to her, and she was like, baby, look, I wasn't going to miss this, because she wanted to vote from her car. There was nobody that came out, because you can vote from your car. But she said, I sat there for about 30 minutes and no one came out. So I found me a parking space, honey. And I got out here because I am going to vote. That has stuck with me, that a woman with one leg that had to make her way from the back of the parking lot to go vote. Nobody has an excuse, right? There's always a way to make your voice be heard.
Absolutely. And the action item I keep telling everybody, which is part of why we are highlighting these state house races, because we need to have energy and excitement for candidates like Dr. Breaux in these runoffs. We got to have energy and excitement for them. And then we have to carry that energy and excitement through November, not December, November, so that we can get people that have energy, that are excited about these different issues that are impacting Texans. Education is huge. We've had a takeover of HISD, which are our main school district in Houston. This is Dr. Breaux's district has a different district in her district, but different school district. But that has an impact on the entire region. When we have all this focus and this drain of HISD, we've had those issues. We have a state that's never really addressed what happened with the school shooting and the school safety issues as well with firearms. We have all these different things that are going on with our state that it feels so small, but one person in the state house can make a difference. That's one extra vote, one person lifting up these important issues, one person that can speak specifically about specifically about education. There was a hearing this week. I'm sure you watched it.
Yes, I watched it.
The education hearing. Any thoughts on that? Anything that you would have added if you were on that panel?
Actually, I love that the people, the boots on the ground, the people that are impacted the most. I always say that the people closest to the problem should be the closest to the solution. Now, the goal is hopefully that the people on the dais were actually listening and bringing that information back as they start developing bills. Several people talked to me prior to going, and I read their testimony and their script and everything. So I did have input that way. But the main thing I said is, don't let this be the end. This is the beginning. Okay, you've testified. Now you need to follow up. You need to, contact that committee member's office. You need to develop a relationship. There needs to be a cadence of communication there, because they need to be able to see us, the people in education, as the experts, right? So that is the important thing. So when we talked about, safety, one of the things that you might have heard is these unfunded or underfunded mandates. Mm-hmm. Now, some of these mandates include, of course, special education and safety. Well, the school districts do get allotments for that. But what we heard clearly is that, yes, you've given an allotment, but that doesn't cover everything that needs to be done. But we're still being held accountable for making sure it happens. So my thing is, who's going to fill in that gap? And people, I talked to someone because I was, arguing about this, and they were like, well, you found a way to pay for it, but do you really want to pull out resources from students to be able to put big numbers on doors so that, yes, it's important. The safety of our children are key. But the state has a responsibility to making sure that when these mandates come down, that there is enough money to make it happen. I don't know if you also heard about the 3 harness seat belts, right? So there are for your buses. So there are buses that don't have the adequate seat belts. So districts are required to outfit their buses with this 3-point harness. Many of the soups there were saying it's going to cost us more to get this 3-point harness on these old buses. We probably need to buy new buses, but we don't have enough money for that. Right? And so I even heard one of the superintendents say that the makers of the buses said that it wasn't made for that. And so we're not going to put that 3-point harness seatbelt in there because it would invalidate the insurance or whatever. So those are the things that it's important that the boots on the ground and the people that are involved in this have a say when these bills and these mandates are being created to make sure that it's reasonable to be done.
That is so interesting. As you're talking about that, I'm just thinking about being on a bus from, childhood on, bouncing around with no seatbelt. And that just seemed like normal. And I forgot, I think they said that they would claim that, it was safer because of how big the buses were and all that. And I got into two accidents on a bus as a kid. A car hit us one time. I was in high school then. And then another time we almost fell in the ditch. They were able to pull us out, but she was able to get us right. But we had tipped a little bit into a ditch. And she wasn't going too fast, but just kind of the way that street was. But you think of that from a safety standpoint. We just bounced around with no seatbelt. Crazy.
Right. And we're not saying that some of these things aren't needed, but what the districts are saying, okay, but we need adequate funding to make sure it gets done.
So one of the areas one of the places that we're losing some of our money, school vouchers. School vouchers. This program, if I could be queen for a day of Texas, that'd be one of the first things I get rid of. I would redo these maps, and then I would get rid of these school vouchers. Can you talk about that and what your take on that is, especially as a person working in public education?
Yeah. Well, here, look, for me, I'm all about parents' choice. I don't want to take choice away from anyone. But we act like, or some people act like there's not choice within your own school district, right? We're not highlighting those. But the interesting thing to me is that people are constantly yelling about accountability. We got to have STAR tests. We have to have all of these things. And public school districts are supposed to do all of this because you got to be accountable for the money that you're getting. But then you're literally going to take that same money and move it over to a private institution that does not have to take STAR. They have their own way of determining whether students are successful or not. There's not a publicly elected board, so that if you're having issues or you want to talk to the school board about some things that are happening, public school districts twice a month, you're having those open meetings. And so, but where do parents go when they have issues with a private school? And then also to be able to, with private schools, they get to pick and choose. They say, anybody, even people, even students that have a learning difference or whatever. But I've seen a couple of reports out that said that's not necessarily the case. And vouchers, when we think about who's actually taking advantage of the vouchers, I know you have seen the reports that have come out, and they've said, after all the applications have come in, a majority of the people, of the families that are taking advantage of these vouchers were already in private school. They were already. So how is that, rescuing people or our students from these failing schools, is what they say? How does that work? So my thing is, if you're taking public money, you need to be publicly accountable, right? That's the main thing. And I've always said, yes, I agree with parent choice. You know, I don't take that away from them, but I fight for fully funding public education, fully funding it.
That's the biggest thing. I think that we talk about defunding different things, and people are like, why does college cost so much now? Why are all these issues? And it's because education has not been fully funded for some time, and they chip away at it in different ways, and people just don't know. It gets chipped away in these like voucher schemes and all this different stuff over time. It plays a big part in it. It's fully funding public education is a key thing. And we've got a lot of candidates right now that education, it kind of just goes to show you what's happening in Texas. There are a lot of candidates up and down the ballot whose background is coming from school boards and being teachers in education, who are coming forward because they're seeing what's happening. They're like, okay, somebody with some expertise got to get up here and talk about it. Somebody has got to get up here and talk about it. And so I love that you started out saying that you were a doctor. There's been a really, really fun, I say it's not really fun, but it's kind of fun to me as a person with a JD, a fun conversation online about Black women with doctorates and our education. And if you all noticed, she very quickly said what she studied and what her focus was. And that's because when you go and get that doctorate, that's a very big deal. A lot of work was done. This is what I focused on. Because it's important, but I also think that's so important too, that we've got in our community, people go get these degrees with the hopes of coming out to help our community. And we see that. And so you've done that in so many different ways, and trying to do even more, I think is so amazing. And people oftentimes, y'all, when they work in the state house, they don't just, they do other things as well. Still also really community based as well on top of that. So I love that. What can I know we have like 30 minutes, and there's like 75 calls tonight about the march in Montgomery. I don't know if you caught that. I'm going to there's a march in Montgomery for voting rights on Saturday. I'm actually driving down with a group of Texas creators. We're going to be there talking about Texas. We're going to be in our Texas attire. They're supporting Alabama folks as well, but it should be very. The word excited is not the word. Excited isn't the word. So I'm like, I hate that we're here. I hate that we even had to go back here and do this.
Yes.
But it felt like to me, it was that kind of moment where my undergrad's history, I sat in classes learning about the civil rights movement. And you always think like, where would I be at in these moments of unrest? Where would I be at? And I'm like, I always said I was going to be out there fighting. And so that's kind of how I see it. I'm sure you do as well, because you're seeing these things happening, and you aren't just complaining into a void. You're saying, I'm going to go out here and run for this seat to help support my community. Excited, energized. Energized, I think is the word. Yes. To get the word out, to get people excited. But like, as Dr. Breaux said, people are not seeing what's happening yet. They're not, like, we're tapped in, like we're passionate, we're tapped in, but people on here are passionate and tapped in, but everyone's not seeing what's at risk here. As she's mentioned, healthcare, education, voting rights. There's so economics, like people's businesses, being able to maintain, it's hardworking people. It's just so much at stake here. And I hope that people are hearing you and saying that. So she's in District 149. If you're in my sway group, I have 35 people in this district. I sent them all a message saying we're going to be 35 people. And definitely, if your homework for tonight, if you don't know what your state house rep is, even if you're not in Texas, I encourage you to do that. Go figure out who your state house rep is. It's so, and they're the person that probably will respond. People be up here emailing their senators and their Congress people and their U.S. reps. Email your state house rep. They probably can do a lot of work for you too.
Right. You know, and even like with where I am right now, I have this thing that I call it civic sips, right? Because so many people think that voting or the political process is so it's so much. I just don't understand it. And literally, I call it civic sips because we go out, we have coffee, and during the time that we have sip on some coffee or tea, I talk to them and educate them on, like you said, finding out who's on your ballot, how to pull up your candidates and read what each one of them are about, and then make sure that you know who you want to vote for because they're representing your best interests. It is so important. We have a lot of get out and votes. We got a lot of that, but we also got to educate people who, we register them to vote, but then what's the next step? We got to educate them on how to figure the system out. And I think that so many people are counting on the fact that, yeah, we got a whole bunch of people registered to vote, but we've never educated them. So they feel very overwhelmed. So they're like, yeah, I'm going to sit this one out, or I'm going to undervote. I'm going to go and I'm going to vote for the top people, and I'm not going to go down the ballot because I don't know what judges do. I don't know what county commissioners do. And so then they undervote. They just I can't tell you how many times when I was out there at the polling location, I'm just here to vote for Jasmine Crockett. I mean,
Jackson would tell you not to do that as well. I am with you. One of my big things this year, and I actually, because it annoys me so much now, I started deleting these comments. I hate an empty go vote refrain now, because it's not enough. It's not enough. If you say go vote, go vote, go vote, and your friend gets there who hasn't been keeping up with politics like you have, they get there, they walk in Harris County, Fort Bend, they're gonna have 100 things on their ballot. And now they're overwhelmed. And my mom worked the polls this year, and she said people left because they said, I'm not prepared for this. You can't use your phone in Texas. So you can go there and sit there and Google the things. You got to have come prepared. And so I'm right there with you. My big thing now is don't just tell them to go vote. Give them some information about how they can find their ballot, recommendations for their ballot, where the polling locations are as well. We got to do better about looking up polling locations before we get in the car. All these different things. I'm right there with you. So I know we said 30 minutes. I know our time is very precious. We are going into the runoff. Time is precious, but I'm so glad we got to talk to you because when I messaged your team this. So when I worked with Sway making my voting group, and this voting group is they use, just so you know, I don't know if you knew this, but they use my Sway voting group for all their presentations. They have gone and talked to people like Congresswoman Lauren Underwood from Illinois, about our Sway voting group. And I say ours because they presented all over the country, and they use my Sway group as a demonstration, and they use your race as an example of what Sway can do, and how we get together as a community and we share these kind of voting groups in the community, how we can help Sway and win these small down ballot races. And so when I posted I was going to be interviewing you today, the co-founder of Sway, Claire, was like, oh my God, she knows your name because they use it so much that Claire was like, oh yes. She was so excited. And I'm sure they'll use this. They'll probably share this interview as well, because they've been stomping through Capitol Hill talking about what we're talking about, educating voters down ballot races. And they've been I was one of the first adopters for Texas. And I just bought in and just started adding people on there and just saw the power of it. And they came out on the flip side and they go, there's 2 races, Erica, that we think that your group collectively probably helped us Sway, and yours was one of them. And I've been using yours because, and now I got to tell Claire, the margin of victory actually is 3. I'm going to tell Claire's going to freak out. 3.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing for educating voters and for putting it out there in simple, everyday terms, that people can understand, and you're motivating people. And I love the fact that you're getting it out there, that there is a runoff election. Don't just sit back. Actually, early voting starts next week, May 18th through the 22nd. And we have it Take It to the Polls Tuesday, May the 26th. So I just thank you for what you're doing. And also, to use my race as an example, I just thank you because you getting the word out about my race. I'm sure it helped tremendously. So keep doing what you're doing, because we got to make it through this runoff.
Thank you. I told people I'm going to be harassing them about the state house races come November. I said everyone's getting a message. Hey, you're in District 149. Have you met Darlene Breaux? Here's her website.
That's right. That's right.
So yes, I love it. Thank you so much. Good. I know you probably have a crazy weekend this weekend. It's the last weekend before.
Yeah, we are block walking, door
everything.
knocking.
I love it. So good luck to you all. Again, y'all, we start voting in Texas on Monday, May 18th. If you voted, even if you didn't vote in the primary, you can come vote in the runoff. If you vote in the primary, you must vote in the Democratic primary again, which I'm happy to do that. So I will be there. I'm not in 149, but I'm definitely rooting for you from my district and sharing things as well. So y'all, like, we have a lot of things on the ballot. There are a couple runoffs for state house races, U.S. House races as well. There's too much. And if you have an opinion, go put that opinion in the ballot box, y'all. We need those opinions shared.
Right.
Yes. Thank you again. We have to chat again. Once you win this runoff, we're going to circle back and chat again.
That's right. Invite me back.
Yes. Thank you so much. Everyone have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.